Welcome to another edition of the FODcast. And today I am delighted to welcome my guest, Angeley Mullins. Angeley, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Tim. Nice to be here.
You're welcome. And Angeley, you are the founder and CEO of Aetheris Ventures. Am I pronounced that correctly?
Yes, Aetheris Ventures.
Maybe at Paris, there you go, almost. So you've built and scaled revenue engines from pre-seed right through to IPO, including a unicorn exit, which we don't have very often on the podcast, if at all, actually. And you now work with founders and leadership teams on AI-driven go-to-market brand strategy and growth. That's my introduction. I've done my best, but if you could perhaps give a little intro for the audience, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, of course. So again, nice to be here. Thank you for having me. Hello, all the listeners. If you're listening at home or on the train, plane, bus, I am Angela. I'm the founder and CEO of Aetheris Ventures. I have scaled 7 companies in my career. I'm originally from the States, living in Berlin. So I've scaled 7 companies, 3 big tech, the rest scale ups, 1 unicorn, 1 IPO. And I have been everything from a chief marketing officer, chief growth, chief revenue, chief commercial, all the chiefs. And after scaling those companies, I said, hey, I would love to help founders and CEOs do the same. And I also do a lot of mentoring as well for executive leaders or even leaders that are coming up through the ranks. Because guess what? Who knew they wanted to be mentored by someone who's done it before? So I love what I'm doing now, and I get to work with so many different leaders across so many different markets. So happy to talk to you today, Tim, all about it.
Lovely. I'm looking forward to it. If we can kick off with something, what, in your view, is it? What's the thing that originally pulled you towards founder-led brands and founder-led sales?
It was really interesting. I started talking about this a few years ago and actually got laughed at because founders are like, what do you mean? It's just all about product marketing or you just got to push the product. And then what started happening is I would say about maybe a year and a half ago, this changing in the market with the flood of AI tools and the flood of AI. Everybody is getting content which looks the same. Now people need to understand how to be optimized inside of the GPTs. And founders were like, hey, wait a second. We actually have to have a story. Where I would say 3 to 5 years ago, again, it was all either about product or product marketing. So, founder led branding is not just about the story of the company or your product. It is actually about the founder story and the founder journey. So, I always take people to one of the prime examples is there's a company out of London called Ivy, IVEE. It is called the job platform for everyone else. Amelia, and I think it's a two-sister founding team. Amelia is one of the founders of that company who does an amazing job. So if people always ask me the question, what's the, you know, chess piece example of this? I say, look at Amelia's LinkedIn. She doesn't always really talk about her job recruitment platform that she's building. She talks about her stories. So she has some iconic posts of her being in the Sunday Times. She got on Dragon's Den, but also, ups and downs of being a founder. There's an iconic post, like half of the LinkedIn post is her face and she's crying. And then the other half is like, oh my gosh, something, excellent has happened. The reason that founder branding does so well is because people want authenticity and they want something that they can relate to. So this is the whole wave of founder branding. Now it's becoming a massive thing, especially in the tech space.
Okay, and then this applies to me specifically. This is something that I've been working on, so I find this really, really interesting. I'll be definitely having a look at Amelia. What era are we in right now for go to market? If I reflect on the past, I don't know, a couple of years for me, it's changed massively in our business, in our sector. What era are we in from your perspective, and what's actually changed in the past 18 months?
We are in the era when we're going away from this just pure sales led approach to a half AI product led approach, and then also this storytelling approach. The reason for that is because it's not so much about selling product features anymore. because product features can be produced so quickly. And when you have tools like Lovable, and then you have AI, assisted engines like Claude Copilot that are doing all of these processes and things for you, the go to market landscape has changed. And people now want to hear about what is the story and the vision. There is a couple of really interesting examples. Y- Tell people to read the Wall Street Journal article that was just December of 2025 saying corporations are desperately trying to hire storytellers. Here in Europe, Sifted did an article last year saying Europe doesn't have a startup problem, it has a storytelling problem. Now you're seeing companies like Miro. This is a real job description that you can look up, and any of the listeners you can apply to today. It is called the head of storytelling, right? And this is an actual job now, and they are paying big bucks for this job. You can see the actual salary listed in the job description. Another company which is hiring head of storytelling is called Vanta. And you're starting to see this wave. So, Tim, you're asking me what's the change in go to market now? It is gone, it's gone away from features and gone away from price, and it's gone more to story and the narrative and authenticity, because products, you're able to create a product cheaper, quicker, faster, and as well as features. So we're seeing this huge shift. Uh,
Interesting. And we've obviously seen the huge shift quite rapidly recently with how much AI is changing people, businesses' abilities to develop products, for example. But what do you think the difference will be between right now and 4 years' time in that marketing go-to-market space?
Gosh, I gave a speech last year, CMO Alliance, and I said why CMOs will be the CROs of the future. What you're going to see now is you're already starting to see the shift on what I call the entry level to mid market jobs. You're, these jobs are going away, and it's being replaced by AI strategists in that area. Case in point, content, a role that has been highly affected by AI. Now we're hiring content engineers, and they are people that understand how to use the AI tools. So when you look at go to market, and I'll include marketing, sales, and CS, and I'll call it comprehensive go to marketing organization, you're not going to see all the SDRs and BDRs. You are going to see basically a strategist managing AI agents, the same with content, the same with design, even sales reps. You're going to be talking to AI agents or AI agent assisted systems over the next 5 years. And then only if you have a higher value ticket item will you be kicked up to an actual sales rep. So in the old days, you would have SDRs and BDRs, and they would do all the grunt work, and they would kick it up to a senior, sales executive, and then they would take the deal from there. You're not seeing that anymore. So you're going to be seeing AI agents and AI workflows do it, and then it will kick it up to a senior level person. So people that are senior level roles and really know their craft and can have critical thinking behind it, these people will thrive over the next 4 to 5 years. People that are just focused on very manual process oriented kind of tasks, that will go away.
And that's something is being talked about extensively within what we do. And it's very interesting. You suggest that you'll be SDRs and BDRs being replaced, and the higher ticket items or the more complex part of the sale process being taken up to a person. That's very interesting to see how that will play out. Sorry, go on.
Go ahead. It's something that we're already seeing. So you're already, like, I think 1 to 2 years ago, you saw the Klarna and the Duolingo examples with like the CS teams, and they tried to outsource that. There are certain circumstances where you're going to need people. So like things in language learning, like there's different areas where you really need people. And then there's areas that are very process oriented where you don't. And I would also say the GPTs and what the AI tools that we're using are changing. So you look at the classic Chat GPT, everybody was on Chat GPT, and that was the big thing. Now in 2026, people are saying, no, it's actually Claude. That's becoming a bigger thing. Or for research, Perplexity is better. So you're not just seeing an evolution of the go to market and the skills and the roles, you're seeing an evolution in the AI tools and the work systems and the processes. And when we have companies like NAN automating workflows, the whole world will be different in 4 to 5 years.
And those AI tools are going to start to specialize, I think, which will be the differentiator. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, you're gonna see what I call, I'll take it back to those of you that are listeners that lived through the dot-com bubble, you're gonna go through another bubble, the AI tool bubble, and you're gonna see a lot of these AI tools consolidate. Because right now, and I always tell founders and CEOs, I'm like, "How many tools do you need to get something done?" And I think every finance person that, is listening to this or exists in any scale up ever has probably pulled their hair out in a nightmare scenario over managing the number of tools. Gonna see the consolidation of the tools.
In terms of the kind of founder-led sales piece, what are the audiences now craving that they weren't 5 years ago when this wasn't such a popular route to market?
They're craving authenticity. They're sick of why my feature is better than my competitor's feature and why my pricing is better. They're sick of that. They want to actually have authentic experiences. They want something to relate to. And so when we talk about coming out of the COVID era and then this shift to AI, what has happened is it has decimated the relatability between beings. And even though that's a very social concept, it has bled into this business go to market arena. So we as humans, we're buyers, right? We're consumers, and they want that relatability, which is why you're seeing this authenticity storytelling. It's having a huge impact because people are absolutely exhausted, right? From ads, which is actually quite interesting because ChatGPT announced that they're going to do ads. So let's see where that goes. But they're exhausted from ads, and then, like I said, as AI is taking over a lot of tools and systems, um, they want to know that what they are interacting with is authentic. So this is why it's a big differentiator.
And what can big enterprise brands learn from this whole founder-led go-to-market piece?
They can learn that the whole concept of what it is called to quote unquote be corporate is going to completely change. So when you think about the Richard Branson, I'll call him the king of founder-led branding, one of the originals, right? This kind of concept is now going to take over because people are going back to this connection thing that I spoke about. Like they want that connection.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, because we've been moving away from that connection for many years with social media, ironically called social media, not particularly social. And then AI has kind of exacerbated that. I do think that whole face-to-face thing is going to become far more unique, but also more valuable. What I mean, you've talked about a few things. So what's broken in the funnel? You've talked about the inauthenticity. You've talked about my product's better than yours. Are those the two main things, or is there more?
It's really interesting is especially if you have a more technical product or a more complex product and service, every founder, CEO, or leader thinks that their product service is so special and so unique. And inside of what I'll call their virtual office walls, they think that the broader public understands what they're doing. And I promise you they don't. And so you can know when you go to market with something that's overly technical, and you can see it if you're, a video sales call, or even if you're doing like a quick elevator lift pitch, and you can see people's eyes glaze over. Like, especially here in Europe, and I'm in Germany, which I think probably they do this worst. I see founders and CEOs spend years optimizing their product and the specs on their product before they understand if anyone likes the concept or if they wanna buy it. And it's a really interesting dichotomy. Coming from the States, we do the opposite, like, we don't even have anything built yet, and we're telling you about our vision and, our story, and people are like, "Oh, yeah, that would be great," and you'd be like, "Okay, would you wanna test it?" And like, "Okay, now I'll go build it." So it's very interesting, but I would say don't make the mistake of thinking that everyone understands the complexity or the technical specs. Simplicity and comprehension of simplicity will outwit you every time a go-to-market motion.
And if you were advising a leadership team, and I'm sure you do on a regular basis, what are you saying to them at the moment in terms of things to both measure and stop measuring?
Okay. The things to start measuring that maybe founders and CEOs did not measure before, your brand awareness, your tone of voice, these things that founders and CEOs used to think as fluffy or vanity metrics are now going to become the ultimate currency. Why? Every other step of the funnel is going to be tracked for you. And it's the founders and the CEOs that get out there. So it kind of leads to the next question of how, when you have GPTs, because we're basically moving out of what we call the website era and we're moving into the GPT era. And in a few years, people are not going to use websites as much to search, and Google's going to have a problem there. And it's just going to be all the GPTs, and we're saying what's the best software for this or that, whatever we need. How do you now rank inside of the GPTs?
Mm,
An exercise with founders and CEOs, and I said, just do a search. And you can do this at home if you're listening. Go into ChatGPT or Perplexity, Claude, whatever you're using, and just say, write me a bio about, and you can put in your name. Or write me a bio about, put in the name of your company or whatever you're interested in. It'll give a response, but the important thing is look at the sources of the response.
mm,
Now the GPTs are just scraping information. So what I tell founders and CEOs, if you want to be at the top, you want to be at the top ranking, I'll say get the G2 ranking for GPTs, you need to be pumping out content like there's no tomorrow.
so they can pull it and assign that to your, yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then you kind of segued us really nicely into how AI in the future. It's talked about relentlessly, but it'd be good to get your view on what's kind of real with AI in marketing, and because there's so much out there.
You know, it's so interesting. For any of the listeners that are big on like the Instagram posts and memes, there was something that came out a few months ago. It was the Wimbledon influencer. So it was a girl AI generated. And apparently, yes, this is real. And apparently, she went to Wimbledon. She got all these followers, and then people realized that she was AI generated. And then people were so upset, right? We're moving into an era where very soon we're not going to be able to really tell the difference between who is real and who is AI. It's also the reason, like when I do like, like a podcast like this, or if I'm on video calls, I actually show my real background. I don't use any of the fake backgrounds because it's right now things that are AI generated are labeled AI. It's going to flip in the future in a few years. People that are real and things that are real, we're going to have starting labels. This is a human, really. And yeah, I know it sounds preposterous now, but just wait, because so many things are going to be AI generated. Um, but how do you position yourself? This is why I'm such a believer in founder led branding. If you don't tell your story, nobody knows, right? And then
Mhm.
if you don't tell your story, someone else is going to do it for you. So when things are optimized in a GPT, and let's be honest, like we don't actually know what the rules are for these GPTs. You have to have a human in the loop to fact check everything to make sure that hallucinations aren't there. You need to be able to control that narrative. And so the best founders and CEOs that are thinking ahead, they're like, okay, how am I going to control this narrative for myself and for my business?
Mm. And if we pull it back into a commerce specific topic, if you're a B2B commerce leader at the moment, what workflows will AI change first in your view?
It's changing right now, outbound workflows like you couldn't believe. It's changing inbound, like inflection points. So if you have Clay and then you basically have like another, inbound, lead generation tool, it's changing that. It's changing ways that we create even videos. It's changing ways that music is done. Like the entire system is changing. It's even changing the way that we do analysis. I mean, in the future, you may not even need a RevOps team. in the future, like, I mean, you're talking about somebody or something that is extremely familiar with your HubSpot, your Salesforce, your Attio, right? And then understands how to put up the workflow processes, tag everything, because in sales, it's always about comments and tagging in your CRM system. So you can collect data, scrub everything, push out a report. You're going to have an AI workflow that will do this for you.
Interesting. And then what do you think is the biggest mistake that people are making with AI adoption?
Wow. Okay. So I'll give you the example because I did this as well. So remember when Google Maps first came out, way back when?
I
Okay.
do.
Now, before Google Maps, I used to have to know where I was going. I used to have to know directions. Okay. Now, I probably couldn't find the coffee shop around the corner. Like Google would have to tell me, turn right, turn left, 300 meters, there it is. And whenever you're trying to find a location, you see floods of people with their mobile phone in hand wandering around, right? And they're telling them where to go. They have lost their critical thinking and sense of direction. The same thing has a possibility of happening now with AI and with GPTs. So when these workflows are doing everything for us, do we have the critical thinking to be able to critique the response? Maybe we find the hallucination, or maybe we just know intuitively that that's not the way it's supposed to be done. You have that critical thinking. And so in your question, what's at danger of being lost? We could lose our critical thinking skills. And that would really be, I think, detrimental.
Yeah, well, if you outsource your thinking consistently, you're not training yourself. And I do exactly the same thing with the sat nav in the car. I'll be putting it on for a journey where I really shouldn't be, just because you just don't bother looking at road signs anymore.
Oh, and people, back in the day, like, I remember my dad had the paper maps, like, almost I don't think people have them anymore, and he would just know, and he'd know where to go, like, and so it's completely different, and I know that AI is gonna bring amazing advancements. I'm really looking forward to the advancements in healthcare, education, like, there's really cool stuff coming. But this one piece, this critical thinking piece, is something that I really believe that humans need to hold on to. When you take it back to a commercial topic and in business, there's that human gut instinct. They always say the best founders and CEOs have that human gut instinct and they just know. And I want to make sure that we keep that. The same can be said about revenue leaders, marketing leaders. But if you're not practicing, if your brain is not going through these exercises, how do you keep on top of your own game?
Yeah, very good point. Um, Before we did the podcast, one of the things we talked about was, I think I said to you at the time, you've done an awful lot in a relatively short period. And not only have you done an awful lot, you've also done that being a senior female leader in tech, which, whilst I can't directly relate to, I understand it to be a lot tougher uh, for you. Be interesting to get your view on that, particularly how you think the landscape has changed since you've started.
Wow. Great question. Important question. When I talk to female leaders, I always start out with a little speech and it's called The Only One. So sometimes you end up being the only one in a board meeting, the only one in a senior leadership meeting. Women still go through this dichotomy of if you are too what's deemed assertive or aggressive, you get a label when you're being confident. Sometimes when, men will say the same thing. Um,
Mm,
and they're viewed as confident and women are viewed as something else. And then if you are too nice or too soft, then you get the other label of not being competent when you're just trying to be nice and passive. I will also say for men, I think men don't have it easy as well. I'm not saying that they went through the same things that women did, but I find that men in senior leadership, sometimes they have a stigma that they always have to be strong, and it's something within our society. So if they show empathy or caring, that's considered a weakness. And I think that's wrong as well. It's really about a combination of personalities in senior leadership. Coming up as a woman in tech, it's about persistence and perseverance. And this is, I think, when I talk to younger female leaders, they ask me, what is the biggest thing that I need to learn? And I say, you need to learn how to keep going because the world, life, your tech career is just going to throw so many things at you. And it's not always the smartest leaders or the smartest person in the room. It is the person that keeps going. And so these are some of the important things. Outside of that, I mean, of course, there's many double standards and stigmas and all sorts of things. But I think the perseverance and the belief in oneself, that is the single most important skill you can have for women and men too.
Mm. So I've got four daughters. This is a very interesting topic for me to understand. Do you think it's improved? Do you think it's improved over time?
No, the reason I say that, I would like to say yes, but I will say no. And it was 2022. So we're in 2026 now. So in 2022, I was in Copenhagen. We had this big conference, and there was a very well known senior female news reporter. She was an anchor, news reporter anchor for one of the top stations, and she was moderating this conference. And I was so excited to see her backstage. And she asked me, she's like, so what's it like in tech? And I was telling her, some of the struggles. And you know what she said to me? She's like, some things haven't changed. And I'm like, wow. And when I also mentor young female leaders coming up, and they talk about some of the same issues that I struggled with, such as people confusing assertiveness, being strong is too aggressive, or if you're soft and helping, they think that you're incompetent, such as sometimes as a woman, you have to work twice as hard just to prove, something else, such as sometimes there is still a boys' club, depending on, what company you're in and what the situation might be. For example, I have had for senior leadership roles, for C-level roles, I have had people ask me about my fertility plans during interviews. If I was a man, would that ever happen? Never. Even LinkedIn did, I'll call it it's not a real study, it's just an anecdotal situation that happened on LinkedIn where female leaders of all levels were saying if they go to, and you can try this at home, if you go to the settings of your LinkedIn account and you switch your gender to male, what happens? I did it for 2 weeks, and again, all anecdotal data. My reach went up. I got more connections from men all of a sudden. And really, you can just
Just
try it.
from switching.
Yes.
Okay, no photo change.
No
Nothing.
photo change, nothing. This was the whole, like, ghastly thing of the whole exercise. There was no photo change, it's super obvious I'm a woman, but you just change the demographic label and just see what happens. So for us to think that biases don't exist is absolutely crazy. I mean, even as a woman, sometimes, because my face, I do a great job, I have a great facialist. And so everybody's like, oh, you have all this experience, but you look so young. And I'm like, do you even know how old I am? And I'll do this. But if a man gets older, they automatically think that he is wiser and has more experience. But women have to look like they haven't aged past the age of 29. So there's a lot of things that are happening. So for all those reasons, for your daughters, for any, one that has a daughter, sister, what I would tell them is perseverance and self-belief. These are the two things. A lot of the other things you just simply cannot control, but those are the
I always I say to all four of my daughters, and they probably get annoyed with it, but I say that life isn't fair, and the sooner you get your head around that, and the sooner you can start to make an impact on the things you want to make an impact on, because it's just not. And it sounds like it's even more unfair for them being female in the careers they want to undertake. Um, what do you think needs to shift then in leadership culture to actually make some progress?
there is okay, when I grew up, it was kind of under, like, the GE, Jack Welch, philosophy, and which I think is outdated and wrong. I worked at Amazon as my first career in tech, and they had the stack ranking going on. Like, fundamentally, the way that work is done, I think, is outdated. This 9 to 5, I know there's a lot of debate specifically with larger companies if people should be in an office or out of office, but I think what the COVID era proved to us is if you give people trust and flexibility in their work outcomes are actually higher. So the way that we work, I think, needs to change. Um, Also, you're seeing the rise in what's called portfolio careers. So what's gonna happen as AI starts to take over big swaths of jobs? What I always tell people is if you go on YouTube, the CEO of Anthropic put out this was months ago on CNN with Anderson Cooper. He did a fascinating interview where he claimed on national television that 30+% of roles will be eliminated by AI in the next few years. So this is World Economic Forum did a jobs report, like this data has been tracked. And so when you see large swaths of roles that are going to be consumed, and it's not like these roles are going to be maneuvered into something else. These roles are just going to go away. So this rise of portfolio careers, meaning people do a little bit of this and then they do a little bit of that and they do this. This also leads into why founder-led branding is going to be so important, not just for founders and CEOs, but for everyone. To answer your question more directly, the whole system is changing. My parents did the 9 to 5 and was at the same place for 15 to 30 years and got the pension and got the watch. I mean, in the millennial group and certainly the Gen Z group, how many people do you know that even happens? The average time frame for an average tech role these days is about 2 years if you're lucky. And then for senior level roles like CMOs, CROs, these kind of roles, there's many executive reports that are put out that said the average time frame is like maybe 18 months. So when these roles turn over so long and you have a new person coming into the career, I tell them, "Hey, in 10 years, you're gonna have at least 5 jobs." So means you have to be multi-skilled. You have to learn how to present yourself. You need a brand. Right? Like, you're gonna go through this so many times. So the entire system is changing.
And one of the things that you support your clients with is raising capital as well, growth. And in this current market, what's changed in the past few years, and also what should these founders be thinking about when they're trying to raise capital?
Wow. So investors have gotten more fearful, right? The amount of capital being deployed is less. A lot of the companies that were in or are in their portfolios are having trouble, right? Which creates that cycle of the fearfulness. Of course, everything AI, and I think anyone in tech knows what I mean when I say that. It's just AI is everywhere. Um, Figuring out how you can truly make a difference, because I think right now on a broad scale, we're in the era like the dot-com era, right? Where it's like AI everything, just like dot-com everything. And so you see all these tools sprouting up. Over the next few years, you're going to see the consolidation of those tools. We're still going to have AI, it will do great things for us, but it's going to consolidate down. The founders and CEOs that are going to get through this time period, they need to either truly be transformative in what they're doing, or they need to start serving higher purposes, right, in what they're doing. Because AI, all the very minor, what I would call business features or processes that businesses used to be able to create revenue on, that will all be capsized because AI will do it for you. When AI does it for you, how do you kinda get ahead of that?
And so, just so I'm clear on time, you said the investment has tightened. I mean, I've seen it with clients we've worked with where they've taken investment 3 or 4 years ago and the charts were like that. And now they're either flat or they're pointing down. So they're struggling at this stage, and the investors are kind of backing off a little bit. But has, in the short term, last 12 months or so. Has that changed? Has it improved?
It depends on what you're in. I mean, like, look at Synthesia. I mean, with 4 billion pounds, they just had, I think it was 200 plus per million investment. So I think businesses that have already figured it out or they're already dominating, then that money will continue to come in. It's a different story when you're looking at very early stage, looking at pre-seed, seed, series A, when they're still trying to establish product market fit and you need to prove that you have traction or that you will get it. We're talking about a completely different scenario. So it's, I think the answer varies, right? Depending on the type of and the stage that we're talking about.
So what are investors looking for though? What signals are they waiting for until?
So looking at if you're pre-seed, seed, series A, looking at what the demographic shift will be. So like age tech is a really great space to be. There was a pitch that I had from a very early stage founder recently. This woman was really building an app to help solve what we call end of life. So it's something that a lot of people don't want to think about or talk about, but what happens to your finances? What happens to everything? How do you get people on board? What are all the services that you're going to need? Think about the baby boomer demographic. Some of the things that you're going to need. That's why I say age tech is a really interesting one. We started off our podcast today talking about how social media is not very social. And so there's a lot of founders that are looking, how do they solve the loneliness epidemic? And that's a big one. So this is what I'm saying, looking at going beyond the I'm a software that has a feature that solves just some business process that AI is going to consume, going beyond that and going to these bigger social topics, I think is what investors are looking at. Conversely, over the past 1 to 2 years, I've seen investors step away from climate tech.
Right.
So there's been a huge one where they've backed off of that. The reasonings that I've heard is really just because they haven't been able to have enough exits. It hasn't been able to prove the growth numbers. So whereas 3 to 5 years ago, sustainability was a big thing, and I'm an ultimate believer in it, from an investment perspective, a lot of your institutional investors have backed off of it in favor of deep tech. And so now deep tech is kind of I'll say the new shiny object.
Okay. And if we just go back to the skills piece, and we talked a lot about AI, job displacement, the change in the roles of the people that are still going to be in these businesses. What skills, in your view, will define the best marketing and growth leaders over the next 2, 3 years?
I just wrote an article about this. It'll be published, I think, shortly. Creativity. And this is also backed up by a lot of different reports. Like I said, the World Economic Forum, I think, just put out a new job or had put out a jobs report. And it actually does a matrix map of the skills. So creativity will be one of the skills for the exact reason that I said. It's not about manual, mundane tasks anymore. It's not about how fancy you are doing spreadsheets. It's about how can you do broader, bigger picture thinking to then direct the AI tools to create something on a very micro level. So if you are just new starting out, or if you're at the junior to mid stage of your career, at least right now in 2026, the number one skill I can tell people to learn how to prompt.
Hmm. Yeah.
Learn how to prompt.
And from a regional and sector kind of perspective, we've spoken about you're from the US and you're working in Germany at the moment, and you and I spoke about the coverage you have across Europe and the US. Do you see much difference between those markets
Yes.
from a go-to-market mindset perspective?
Oh, yeah, it's massive. I would say there's a canyon, and not to make a pun about the ocean, but still, there's a canyon between them. Um, I'm in Germany. Being an American in Germany, it's almost like you could write a sitcom, like, about the situation because, like I said before, I had to coach a founder maybe a month or 2 ago. The guy, really passionate, into his product, but he spent 2 years optimizing his product and his features. And he had an AI product, and I said, okay, let's break it down. What are you creating? He's like agentic AI. And I'm like, okay, well, what is it doing? And he's like, well, we're putting this piece and this piece and this piece together. And I said, so you're creating a workflow. You're creating an AI workflow. And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, what's the difference between what you're doing and what NAN or Make or any of these other companies are putting together? And then he kind of had that light bulb moment. And I said, this is the reason why you figure out your vision, your story, your use case first and figure out who would buy it and in what circumstance. You do that first instead of spending so much time optimizing your product. And they do that in Germany. As I said, Germany's the worst when it comes to this. It gets better. I think the further west you go, it gets better on that front. But then the Germans, rightfully so, they have the argument and they say, okay, all the Americans do is that they just talk fluff, and it's a vision. We want to see the methodology. And my response is AI will take over the methodology and the data for us. So what's left after that? And when you talk about investors and pitch competitions, et cetera, it is selling the vision and selling the story. So this also goes to my point at the beginning of our conversation where I said, look at Miro. So if you're listening to this, Miro, head of storytelling, New York City, that job pays over $200,000 a year. And this is a mid-level role. Okay. Vanta, head of storytelling, like you're seeing the shift everywhere from the way that investors invest to the jobs that are being hired to how do you get recognized? The whole thing is changing. So I would say if you have a role that is solely based, it's very process and task based, then you need to learn how to be the best strategist in that area and how to use the AI tools because this is going to be the future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. From a sector perspective, if we look at modern commerce adoption, which industries are you seeing outside of retail that are adopting those modern?
That are adopting modern commerce ways of working.
And not just the way, but the technology as well as the implementation and the adaptation of the technology.
Healthcare. So that's one of the first ones. So is it called Nilo or Nico Health? The one that has the big scanner. I think they have a shop is it Stockholm and one in London? Let's Google it really quick. It's basically like a whole scanning device where you can go in and get Nilo Health, I think it's called. If I have it right. No, maybe it's Nico Health. Sorry to the founders if you're listening, but it's a really great like health scanning device where you go in and the scan will give you Neko. I'm so sorry to bounce.
We're close.
Yeah, getting there. Uh, but when you talk about adopting these things, now I've even seen like skincare companies, which will do an AI scan of your face and will tell you like the best product. So I see healthcare and longevity as kind of being the next frontiers,
Okay.
definitely in that area. So not just like not buying clothes or buying furniture or anything like that, but anything that has to do with your actual health. I mean, they're even training AI robots now to do surgeries. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I've seen that. It's pretty incredible stuff. Okay, well, we've covered a lot. I've got a few quick fire questions,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
will, to help round us off. In your view, one KPI you'd really focus on this year?
Revenue per employee. It's the absolute biggest KPI out there. It's the biggest one for the last 1 to 2 years, probably the next 5 years. If you've heard a lot of the talk in the tech circles, they're saying that the next billion-dollar euro companies will be a company of one person later as tools take over. And a lot of the old school, so I'll say the old school Salesforce organizational models, those organizational models are collapsing. So, revenue per employee.
Okay, most overused buzzwords in tech?
AI.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And what is your favorite productivity
My favorite product hack. Ooh, um, Claude Copilot. This is probably one of the best, I would say, daily operationally hacks, but if that's what you meant with your question.
Yeah, actually, on Claude's Copilot, I've been having to play and still not managed to get it to do quite what I need to do. Um, but yeah, it's certainly progress. It's very interesting.
It's a lot of progress. I would also say ChatGPT Health. So they've come out with this new health product.
Okay,
Very interesting. If you listen to Sam Altman, the number one thing people use ChatGPT for is mental health questions. And then
really?
yes, and then one of the other top things is actual physical health questions. And then they did a study on the physical health stuff between ChatGPT and doctors, like real doctors, and ChatGPT actually had better diagnostic outcomes. So, very interesting.
Yeah. Well, no, I use it for health all the time. The physical stuff, planning out training programs, injury rehab. The outcomes are, in my anecdotal experience, definitely better.
Yeah, I mean, even in recommending what tests to ask your doctor about, and it's I would just say read the reports because there's a lot of stuff out there where they're actually doing scientific, reports on this. But this is where I say I'm really excited about what AI will be doing for healthcare forthcoming.
So I think we could probably chat for another hour easily, but we will be running out of time. It'd be really good for the audience just to know where they can find you, connect with you, and also what is next for you this year.
Wow. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also go to my website, angeleymullins.org. I am on Substack. So all of these things. What's next for me this year? So I am looking at raising my first fund. So that is a really nice thing. It's going to be focused on purpose driven companies. And you will see my face on many different stages across the world as I do public speaking. And I also sync with, I mean, as everyone knows, a lot of CEOs and founders. So if you're looking on growing your AI go to market or marketing engines, 0 to 100 million, you know where to reach me.
Yeah, amazing. No, it's been an incredible podcast. I've really enjoyed it, and I've actually learned quite a bit as well, which is always good. So thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Nice.